Manic depression will touch the souls of all Colorado fans and Coach Mike McIntyre should they lose the upcoming Rocky Mountain Showdown against Colorado State in a year where they hope to win enough games to qualify for the bowl, at least be in the consideration most of the season. And that's our entree for Rockin Company's Rockin' CU, featuring Adam Munsterteiger, publisher of BuffStampede.com on the Scout.com network. You can follow him on Twitter at AdamCM777. And Rockin Company's brought to you by, Rockin' CU is brought to you by Rockin Company. Historic and modern masons, general contractors, family-owned and operated in Colorado. 5 decades, 2 generations. Build it with rock. Build it with Rockin Company, rockinco.com. And Zadie's Deli, where Jason Hirsch and I frequently dine. When you eat delicious food, you want generous portions. That's my philosophy. In Cherry Creek at Zadie's Deli's, there's free parking front and back, 121 Adams Street. And they cater Zadie's Deli. And we welcome in the publisher of BuffStampede.com, must-reading, Adam Munsterteiger. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Michael. A week from today, we'll actually be talking about a football game instead of talking about what's to come, so I'm excited for that for sure.
That's it. We will have results next Saturday and go in depth on that. And speaking of which, I was talking to Kelly Lyle from the Coloradan on the Fort Collins on the Colorado State side, who I enjoy his stuff and his perspective on things. And we talked about it being a must-win. And I said, the way I look at this game is there's not incredible pressure on Colorado and McIntyre to win. There's unbelievable pressure not to lose this game.
Yeah, I think both. Obviously, if Colorado's going to reach their goal of going to a bowl game, you look at their schedule, it's hard to pick out 6 wins, and this is one of those games that you pick out as a win. So, I think it's a lot of pressure to win and not to lose, without question. This is the most important game of the Mike McIntyre era. There's no question. A lot of times you hear about how this is CSU's Super Bowl. This needs to be CU's Super Bowl this year, without question.
And of course, depending in some part how the game goes, if it does go Colorado State's way, and let's face it, it's their turn to win in this alternating series, and the team that shouldn't win always seems to me to win this game, which is weird. I wouldn't be surprised if behind the scenes, they certainly wouldn't let it out early in the season, if the search for a new coach began, if Colorado drops this game against Colorado State, if at least behind the scenes the search began.
I think as an athletic director, you always have to kind of have some of that stuff going on, and certainly you can't make it public. You've got to kind of have that stuff be private. We'll cross that bridge if we get to it. You mentioned that the team that shouldn't win sometimes wins this series, and that's true. It's not always the case, obviously, but you just look at how this sets up with Colorado having the most combined starts in program history, and CSU is defense, at least up front in the secondary, kind of inexperienced. There really is no excuse for Colorado not to win this football game. The concern sets in if you're a Colorado fan from how Colorado's performed in their openers recently, though, under Mike McIntyre. I think his staff and Mike McIntyre do a really good job as the season goes on when they get film of other teams being able to exploit some things. That's why you've seen them go into a lot of these Pac-12 games where they're supposed to get blown out. And they haven't won many of them, but they've played close in a lot of them, and that's because the staff, again, does a good job of picking some things out when they have a lot of tape on the other team. Now, last year going into the Hawaii game, they didn't have tape on their new coordinator, and they really, really struggled in that football game, obviously losing a game. They, again, kind of like this year going against CSU, they had no excuse to lose that game against Hawaii. So that's where some of your concern sets in, is just that this team has not really performed that well in season openers.
Yeah, that was a brutal game. That was a horrible beginning to the season, and like you say, a season where they got better on the season. When I looked yesterday, Colorado an 8-point favorite in this game. I'm always saying take the points when Colorado plays Colorado State. It's always closer than the national experts think it will be, on this game. But if we start to break down some of the matchups, Colorado's with a healthier, refurbished offensive line, hopefully running the ball and protecting Sefo Lufau, who became a runner last year before the injury, going against a really green defense, Colorado State. The whole defensive line is gone. They've lost one of the returning linebackers, a guy who called their signals in Clyburn. They still have Davis there, who's terrific, and Watson, who should be good. But the defensive backs, 3 of 4 of them are new, along with Tyree Simmons for Colorado State. I think Colorado's offensive line and run game might be unstoppable against Colorado State.
I actually look at the passing game, and you talked about how green Colorado State secondary is going to be this season, and implementing some of this air raid stuff and keeping it up tempo all the time. I expect Cepho Lufau to have a big game through the air. Obviously, Juwan Winfrey went down, and that was a little bit of a hit to the Buffs receiving corps, but they've got some depth there. Bryce Bobo stepped up. The jury's still a little bit out on Colorado's running attack. There were moments last year, like at UCLA, where it was just humming like a well-oiled machine, but for the most part of last season, that unit kind of underperformed in terms of gaining yards on the ground. Colorado State, if you look to a strength there, you mentioned a couple of their linebackers. Personally, I expect to see Colorado try to air it out a lot against Colorado State. Now we'll see if the running game is effective as well.
Interesting, and stepping up for Winfrey, Bobo getting a lot of pub this week.
He is, and this is a guy that's always had the talent to be a starter in the Pac-12, but just wasn't always focused in practice, would take practices off, take plays off, and as a coaching staff, that puts you in a tough spot because Bryce Bobo's teammates saw him, not put everything into every practice his first 2.5 years on campus, and so it's hard to play a guy like that. It sends a wrong message to your team. Cheverini, the new co-offense coordinator and receivers coach, told us that what he's done is he's noticed that Bryce Bobo needs a different type of coaching style. He needs to be pulled aside and explained exactly what he expects out of him every day in practice. And so it seems like that's gotten through to Bryce Bobo, and certainly with this Winfrey injury, I think Bryce Bobo realizes that this is the best opportunity he's ever going to have to get on the field. He's a junior now, an upperclassman, so he's really stepped up. We'll see if this continues. Again, he's had lapses of focus in the past, and so they're really hopeful that he can kind of keep it going because he has had a really, really good preseason.
And there's great hope that Devin Ross has finally arrived. We've been talking about him for a couple of years. His speed, they need Ross and Bobo as complements to take pressure off of Shea Fields, who figures to be the heir apparent as the number one receiver for Colorado. Looking at the other side of the ball, Colorado State's offensive line returns almost intact. I think 5 of the top 6 are back, only lose one starter. They are a run-oriented team with a veteran quarterback who was second in the Mountain West last year, and I fully expect Nick. They're not announcing it, as always, for this game, but Nick Stevens, I expect, will start. How does Colorado's defense, which is a terrific group, best we've seen in years anyway, on the defensive line, and with Addison Gillum perhaps healthy, and Olabode and at linebacker adding more weight and good cover corners, how does Colorado stack up against that run game from Colorado State?
Well, I think that's the most intriguing matchup without question this football game. Obviously, Colorado State's strength is going to be their rushing attack. They've been putting up video game numbers in their scrimmages up there in Fort Collins this year, and we saw what Dalen Dawkins did to Colorado last year. I think it was about 180 yards of offense that he racked up against the Buffaloes. He's got legit speed at that running back position, and that goes against, like you kind of alluded to there, Colorado's strength is kind of their front up there defensively. As long as Gillum is healthy, and by all accounts it sounds like he's going to be healthy going into the season, with that stout, deep defensive line that they finally have after a really long time of putting out maybe some guys that weren't Pac-12 caliber starting defensive line. And this year they've got a group that will run out there on the field and you go, that looks like the type of group that should be starting in the Pac-12. So it's been a while since they've had that. I think 2007, really the last year they fielded a defensive line like this. So that should be a great matchup. The one area maybe I do still give the edge, though, to Colorado State is the running game, just because, again, that is their strength, and they've got experience up front on that offensive line. Colorado's secondary is pretty good, and I think Nick Stevens might have trouble through the air. So I think Colorado State's really going to try to establish the ground game, and they've had some success doing that against Colorado. Now, this is again a better front that Colorado has this year, but it should be a really good matchup. I think if Colorado State is going to win this football game, they're going to have to win that matchup in the trenches pretty sizably.
And that is interesting. And I love the fact that Colorado has 3 cover corners that can get the job done. That is a real strength of this team. Less confidence in the safeties, although there's excitement that Moeller is back and healthy after missing half the season last year with a non-football injury. Got a minute and a half here, so I want to make sure before we talk more specifics that we get your prediction on this game.
Well, you said you're going to take the points. I say those guys out in Vegas are pretty good. I think that 8 to 9 line that I've seen in some places is pretty good. I've kind of bounced back and forth between this being a touchdown win for Colorado or being a 10-point win. I think I'll settle in at Colorado 27, Colorado State 17. I don't think this is going to be a super high-scoring game, but I think it should generally be a pretty good game for about a half. But I think Colorado will find a way to kind of pull away in the second half.
Excellent, excellent. What can people expect if they read BuffStampede.com this week?
Well, we're going to go even more in-depth in these matchups. I'm going to do back and forth with Ryan Krause, who covers Colorado State, to kind of break down every single matchup. So look for that on the site this upcoming week.
I wish that this game wasn't so far out. I would love to have read that before my prediction. I can't go so far as Colorado State winning, but I say they keep it closer than you do. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, that's Adam Munsterteiger. Follow him at AdamCM777, BuffStampede.com, and that's brought to you by Rockin Company. Historic and modern masons, general contractors, family-owned and operated in Colorado. 5 decades, 2 generations. Build it with rock. Build it with Rockin Company, rockinco.com. And Zadie's Deli, where Alex and I, behind the glass there, Alex and I had a excellent lunch and filled our considerable stomachs.
It was delicious. I love their roast beef is good.
Did you get a chocolate macaroon? That's all we really want to know.
Delicious food. You want generous portions? Get them in Cherry Creek, 121 Adams Street, and they cater Zadie's Deli.